Yeah, it's a very special episode of The Last Tackle because, of course, we finally have confirmation that England will be back in action in the autumn with 2 tests against Samoa. Joining me in the studio, none other than England head coach Shaun Wane. Shaun, firstly, how are you?
Yeah, good, excellent, excited, really pumped for the news of the test series coming up. So yeah, we're in a good place.
A lot of talk about whether this test series, these games against Samoa would or wouldn't happen, but they are confirmed, they are in the diary. How pleased were you from a coaching perspective to have these 2 at the end of the year?
Yeah, massively pleased. The hard work of the RFL and the International Board, and to get these games on is tremendous, and to build on what we did last year against Tonga is a massive shot in the arm for our competition.
That's exactly where I was going to start, that Tonga series. Just recap on that. I've not spoken to you really since a 3-0 series win. Obviously, if I'd have offered that to you at the beginning of it, you'd have snapped my hand off.
Oh yeah. Just a win would have been easily good enough. But to win 3-0 against a team, what, you know, on paper they were better than us. They're playing the competition, which is unbelievably good. So the way we acquitted ourselves, the injuries we had, the young kids what come in, it was the making of people like Mikey Lewis and Harry Newman and Harry Smith, and to see them young kids come through and grip it against a team who were physically far bigger than us, it's a credit to what our coaches are doing in Super League.
I think from the outside looking in, that probably was the most impressive thing about that series was, as you mentioned, players like Mikey Lewis and Harry Smith. Obviously, George Williams is your captain, but those 2 have really given you a competition for that second half pack, haven't they?
Yeah, they have, no doubt about that, Lewis. George played in 1 game, and but he's my captain. He's a great player, George. But I think Harry and Mikey acquitted themselves, both themselves, unbelievably well. How they handled the camp, you know. It's not only playing games, it's the amount of time they spend together. It's you need to be a certain sort of person, and both them players and many others acquitted themselves really well.
I've been fortunate enough to step into your England camps over the years, and every time you kind of step through the door at Robin Park, there seems to be a really good atmosphere. The players all seem to kind of bed in together, despite the fact coming from, you know, a number of different clubs. Is that experience that happens on the other 6 days of the week almost as important for you long term as what happens on a game day?
Yeah, absolutely. I want the players to enjoy it. You know, playing for England has to be a enjoyable pleasure. You know, we're all proud Englishmen, and I include Victor Radley and that, people like that. So when we get together, it's not just all about really pushing the players hard. It's about enjoying our time together, and the spirit we had. You know, we had a night out after the 3rd test when we won it 3-0, and it was like a group of friends. You know, you just said quite correctly, and they all come from different clubs, but for that 4 weeks, they were England, and you could tell, you know, and that was the most enjoyable thing for me.
And it is a different mentality, isn't it, that kind of test series environment? You'd had 6 weeks or so together the year before for the World Cup, but playing the same team a few weeks in a row and looking for that kind of points on the board, if you like, 1-0, 2-0, etc. But that's a different mindset, is it, to playing in a knockout?
100% it's a different mindset, you're quite correct. And I've never had that before, where you're playing the same team 3 times and you're reviewing the same game and previewing the same team, and it's tough, no doubt about that. But, you know, we obviously did it better than Tonga. And, you know, and I have to say, some of the players they had in their team, I watch a lot of the NRL, and their players were phenomenal. Some of their players in their team stood out a mile, and when we managed to put a performance together, what stopped them doing that for three games, and it's something which we should be really proud of.
I was just watching the highlights of those games back this morning when I was doing the preparation for this, and actually I'd almost forgotten how good some of the Rugby League England played in that series was, because I remember especially that 2nd test, the conditions were horrendous, that was a real grind, but some of the tries that were scored at Headingley especially were real blockbusters.
Yeah, and that was a conscious thing for me. You know, I was desperate to win the game at St Helens, a lot more desperate in the 2nd game at Huddersfield. It was a shocking day, and, you know, people moaned about it weren't the best game. Well, the conditions were shocking. The only thing I'm bothered about is winning the game. I'm not trying to impress anybody. Playing well it comes a number a second. to winning the game, and we managed to do that. In the third test, we had George back, and I wanted the players to play a bit. It was a drier track, which is what Tonga wanted all the way through, and you bang on the way we played and the quality of the tries we scored. I thought were phenomenal, and I was really impressed. And I can't tell you how good of a night we had after the game, and the day after we all went out together, and it was so satisfying getting some of the best players in your competition and the NRL, the best English men in the NRL, coming together, buying into the cause and showing that desire. You know, you look at Chris Hill playing with a torn pec, and that's painful. And he carried on playing, and he defended a full set, still defending with a torn pec. And that epitomises the English spirit, what we showed. And you know, I thought the lads were so proud of what Ailey did. But the message when we play France and when we play Samoa this year will be that sort of, this is what England is. We're strong, we're tough, we don't give in, and we're passionate to play for our country. And you know, you look at Tom Johnson, some of the tries he saved. People talk about him being a try scorer. The tries he saved were unbelievable. And again, that just shows how proud we are to be Englishmen.
Brings me on perfectly to my next point. That I would imagine, knowing you're probably more pleased about, certainly in those second two tests, the defensive side of it, because keeping Tonga to 4 points in both games is quite an achievement in itself.
Yeah, unbelievable. And people need to understand that. I don't think the players got the credit they deserved when you consider the quality of the players they're playing against. And even the last few seconds when the 3-0 the games were done and nothing was going to happen. They could have scored, but we fought, we defended our line heroically, and you know, the fact that we did that, even though the games were won, just shows you everything about how important the spirit was to us.
And it kind of moving on from that, obviously we talked about the positives from that series, but did you leave with kind of a long list of improvements to make as well? Because when you came out of that World Cup camp, I think we were all a little bit in kind of shell shock with the way that ended, but it felt, the Tonga series felt more like the beginning of the next phase, whereas the World Cup perhaps felt more like a hard line in the sand. Yeah,
fair point, and a good question that. And it felt the same thing to me. You know, there was people said don't dwell on things, and I'm one for moving on, but I couldn't get over that World Cup game for a long, long time. And you know, so again, that Tonga series out my system was so enjoyable. But I do feel it's the start of the next phase for England. And when I finish in a few years' time, I'm going to leave it in a really good spot, and getting Harry started, and Mikey Lewis and Harry Newman started as well. You know, them taking England forward for the next few years, you know, I feel like I've done my job, and there'll be a few more in this French test and in the Samoa game as well, young kids, what's coming through. And that's a credit to the Super League teams, Super League coaches, doing a great job. Youth development, you know, I always think we can do better, but we've got some quality players coming through as well.
Yeah, you mentioned that France game coming up in Toulouse. Obviously, in the corresponding fixtures last year, I think it was it 13 debutants you named?
Yeah.
To be in an opportunity to do that must be a really just nice thing to be able to do as a coach. But also, I guess you'd have learnt a lot about those 13 players, even if you knew perhaps they weren't right at the front of your mind for the series at the end of the year.
Yeah, and we've got an Ashes next year and then a World Cup, and you know, I'm having to build on that as well. And if I think a player's not going to be in my thoughts in the World Cup, then it's going to be hard for me to deal with him this year. So it's really important that we have our eyes wide open and understanding that we need to be strong in a few years' time. And that's the way I'm going to pick my French team, and that's the way I'm going to pick my Samoan team. And all the players understand that. You know, I'll have a chat with everybody before I pick the French team, and everybody will understand where we're coming from.
People will look at the scoreline of that game against France last year and maybe kind of scoff at the significance of the fixture. I certainly don't want to write that game away before we've played it, but I guess from your perspective, regardless of scoreline, just having the players in the camp, as we've spoken about, and having time with them is just as valuable as anything.
It is valuable, and some of the players didn't know me in that French test, and spending a few days and going through footage and understanding my principles, what I expect, and you know, I let Andy Last and Leigh do a lot, but I've got my certain principles what I want to stick to as well. So making sure they understood about our behaviours around the hotel who we represent, and we live and breathe England rugby every day. All them sort of things are really important for me to get over to the players, and that's what the French game does. We're together for 5 or 6 days, and then it's going to be great preparation for the Samoan tests.
I've heard you mention about kind of behaviours around the hotel and manners around the camp and that kind of thing. I know it's something that you're really big on. I'll just simplify the question as much as possible. Why do those things matter so much to an England team whose job is to go and play 80 minutes of rugby league?
Well, we will pick good people, and I don't want anybody, when we go training, when we're getting the coach and we go training at Robin Park or other training grounds, we're stopping at the Whistler Marriott and our hotel. I want them to behave. I want England to have a good name. I want people to say that I'm so glad, I'm so impressed with how England behave. I want people saying that, you know, and I have a saying, anything you do is everything you do, and if a player's respectful to somebody receptionist, and also when we train, I want that much detail in training. The two don't correlate. You can't be sloppy off the field and nail your detail on the field. So that's why it's important. I want people to nail it. I want them to be respectful, good people, but when we're playing, I want them to be nasty, aggressive, competitive animals. And when we finish the game, then they switch back into that nice person again.
As that leads us on, obviously 2 squads you're going to select for games and camps this year. Can we, without giving too much away, can we expect them to look a bit different like they did last year for France at the end of the year? Yeah,
they will look different, and you know, I'll pick on form, and you know, people like George and Jack Wellsby and people like that they've got credits in the bank. They're good players, and you know, so I know the players as well. So I've got people who will pick, but it will be a younger team. There's no doubt about that. I mean, French are going to be strong. You know, they've got an anniversary coming up. It's in Toulouse. They'll be very, very good, and Catalan and Leigh and all their plays for the French team, I think. And if that's the case, then we want to go over there and we want to win that game.
Yeah, I was just going to say it'll be a very different kettle of fish to what it was this time last year, I'd imagine. But also, I guess, we're talking about young players coming through, but actually, those young players, we've mentioned those games again, Mikey Lewis, Harry Smith, Tyler Dupree, the list goes on. They're right at the front of what's happening in Super League as well. So it's almost like it's 2 birds with 1 stone almost, I guess, from your perspective.
It is, and I watch them every week, and you know, and if I need to speak to somebody about not playing at an English standard, they get to know that as well. So I'm happy with how everybody's going. It's going to be an easy pick for me. We'll just pick on form for the French game, but there will be an element of looking for the younger end, making sure that we go for the World Cup.
So moving on to Samoa, 26th of October in Wigan, 2nd of November in Headingley. 2 games against a top international side. And of course, I know you just said that you don't like dwelling on things, but has it got a little bit of a feel of a revenge mission, this one?
Yeah, a little bit, no doubt about that. And I don't think I've ever felt as sad or been as hurt as that game at the end, how it ended. They were the best team, we were poor. No excuse from us, but that took a lot of getting over. I'm very much what's next, and I don't dwell on things, but Christ, I dwelled on that. It was tough to get over, and it still is, you know, because we just undersold ourselves. I weren't good enough, the players weren't good enough. In the most important game of my career. And so there's been a lot of soul searching, you know, me looking at what I did was the first major thing we did. So to get them in this game, you know, there's no denying it, there will be an element of, you know, that team hurt us. They beat us fair and square. I don't know if we got a bit confident after the first game against them in the World Cup, but I knew they'd come back. There were too many good players in that team, and it bit us in the end.
Interesting you talk about the squad being not good enough on that day, but also, you know, yourself. Is that why games like this are so important? Because it provides you with the opportunity to put that right, not just in terms of like a revenge thing, but internally as well with your processes?
Yeah, it does. And what I did, how we train, did we train hard enough? Did we not train tough enough? Did we look after our injuries? Was it the right team? Did I pick the right bench? Was my timings right on the interchange? All them things, it's all about what I did. Never blaming the players. You know, but at the end of the day, players did uncharacteristic things that day, and that again is down to me and something I need to fix.
And a Samoa team that's going to come over stacked with NRL stars. A lot of them have been part of that, or just a number of them part of that Penrith team that's been dominant over there. One of the best NRL teams we've seen. There's two sides to this for me. One is it's a great test for England and a great learning process, a great challenge for you. But also, I think that competitive edge for you on a personal level. You must love getting involved against teams like this.
I love it, and people didn't give us a chance against Tonga. If you remember right, the things what was said in the media, nobody thought we could beat Tonga. They definitely didn't think we could beat them 3-0, and we did. So it just shows you the passion our players have to represent Super League and play for the country and get a test match under the belt. And so this Samoa test, when it's announced, it will be the players will be so pleased and so pumped to make sure that they get in that squad.
And again, we talk about a rivalry between the two teams. Obviously, we've got the France game, but is that what perhaps England need kind of long term? England-Australia is a famous rivalry. Obviously, England-New Zealand, we've had a lot of those games over the years. But if you can add the Tongas and the Samoas into that kind of like almost visceral approach to rugby league, that real kind of derby day feel to it. I know they're not derbies, but that makes those internationals more significant. That must make the game stronger.
Absolutely. And Papua New Guinea, places like that, and we need to make the French are strong, and Wales and Scotland. The more stronger international teams we have, the better for the competition. So I don't want it where England, New Zealand, England, Australia is the main game. We need to make sure that other nations are getting stronger and the international calendar is full, and because that's what the fans want to watch. They love. The feeling in the World Cup, and how many people went watching games was phenomenal, and the shot in the arm it gave to Super League was unbelievable. The season ticket what we did at Wigan, the increase on that because of the World Cup was phenomenal. So it's something which we need to understand, get behind, and support.
You mentioned Wigan. Obviously, that's where the first of these two tests take place, and I cast my mind back to World Club Challenge night against Penrith. That had a test match feel about it, not just in the intensity of the game, but the atmosphere, the crowd. How important will it be for you guys if that can be replicated?
Yeah, very important. Having the stands all full of English fans with our national anthem being sung, and we played Papua New Guinea in the quarterfinals in the World Cup. The massive crowd, and the way we played was that first half. It was as good as I've ever seen from a team. We were faultless. We dropped off a bit in the second half, but we won the game easy against a really good Papua New Guinean team. So it just shows you the Wigan fans, they love international sport and they'll get behind this game, I'm sure.
Hey, this Samoa Series, 2 games, is obviously part of the bigger picture for you, which I guess not ends, but certainly is bookended at the moment by that World Cup in 2026. In between then and now, we've got an Ashes series, which we'll touch on. But I can't work out in my brain if it feels like 4 years, 4 months, or 14 years since we were at that stadium at Bolton. You were announced as England head coach. We were looking forward to an Ashes series. It never happened. A World Cup that got pushed back a year. You've got a much more, touch wood, structured, routine approach into this next World Cup with regular games. You must feel that puts you in a better position. It
does. The more games we can play, Lewis, the better. And having this Samoa series confirmed is a massive shot in the arm. Going to France, being together for the French game, test match is so important. So having a rock solid international calendar is vital for our game moving forward.
And that Ashes series on the horizon, I'm sure, although you won't be thinking about it in too much depth, I'm sure it is kind of at the back of your mind. What an opportunity that'll be for you and the players that go with you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. The players, and I'm in regular conversations with certain players, and the feedback I get is they can't wait. The spirit is very much like a club team, and that's what I wanted to create, and that's what we had in the Tonga series.
And obviously, we've spoken about the regular games being important, but by the time we get to that next World Cup, you'd have played 3 games against Tonga, 2 games against Samoa, 3 against Australia. Up until the last World Cup, you hadn't played a Southern Hemisphere team as England. Obviously, that was a different coaching regime as well since 2018.
Yeah.
So it isn't just about regular games. It's about regular games against teams that you may well be playing at the the business end of tournaments.
Yeah, that is true, and you want to, we want to test ourselves against, no disrespect to France, but we want to be playing them sort of team. What's going to be playing in the quarterfinals, the semi-finals of World Cups. We want to go to Australia. We want to acquit ourselves really well. We want to spread the good name of Super League and make sure that we're at our best. And having that calendar of quality teams to play against is so important to us as a team moving forward.
Speaking of calibre and that experience, what have you made of the English boys that are in the NRL at the moment? Obviously, a few more went over this season. How have you kind of assessed them against the NRL, the international opposition?
Yeah, I'm not easy to please. I look at Morgan's games and Kai's and John Bateman's and watch all the potential England players play. There's always a way to improve. I'm fairly happy with how they're playing, but I think they can improve. And when they jump into an England squad, and that's the most enjoyable thing for me. We get Victor Radley together and Herbie Farmouth in the World Cup and Dom Young, not in the Tonga Test, but in the World Cup. How quick they buy into what we're about. We talk about doing the simple things really well. We talk about the English spirit and never giving in, and them players really jump into what we're about. And from a really, really good competition like the NRL, what they do and how they jump into the English spirit is so impressive to me.
When you think about your team selection, I know we touched on this talking about the France game, but I guess it's a balancing act for the Samoa Series as well, because Dom Young, Mikey Lewis, Harry Smith, Morgan Smithies, Kai Pearce-Ball, even Jack Wellesby, and there's loads more, are all under the age of 25,
yeah.
Which seems crazy when you think about how long some of those players feel like they've been around. They are the kind of players will be selectable in that World Cup cycle in a few years' time. How do you balance bringing those through and getting them game time with also players that might not be, because you need to win games against Samoa?
Yeah, good question. It's tough. It's finding that balance. I have lots of chats with Leigh Breers and Andy Last, and it's very hard to find the balance. There's no doubt about that. I will always side for a player who's young, what's going to be with us a while. I'm so glad I got the chance in the World Cup to pick people like Chris Hill, Elliot Whitehead, players I've not coached before, but oh my God, they had a big effect on me as a coach. I get it now, why people tell me about Elliot Whitehead and what they told me about Chris Hill. Absolute quality. Das Clark in the Tonga Series, really, really good players. And that's why my job's so good. Coaching the best players in your competition is fantastic. But watching these young kids come through and watching Mikey grow and Harry Newman finish, and how happy he was having a beer after the game with his teammates. It's just the best job in the world. It's so enjoyable. It's untrue, but finding that blend of experience and that young fire in your belly sort of player like Mikey and Harry Smith as well, is just part of coaching what you have to do, and hopefully I'll get it right.
That leads me on to a couple of questions just to finish with, slightly away from this Test series, but one, just some news in the last 7 days. You spoke about leaving this England team in a good place for the people that come after you. Leigh and Salford both given elite academy status this year. From an England coach perspective, 10, 15 years down the track, having more clubs producing more players, you must feel that it's going to be in a stronger position again.
Yeah, I do. And it's credit to them. And they get some good young players in them areas as well. But there's no doubt about it. The success I had at Wigan was through our young kids, what's come through the system. And whilst we've always signed good overseas players, walking on hugging George Williams, and you've won a cup. Somebody who's been with you since we're 13 and 12, and is really, really enjoyable. You're Liam Farrell, people like that. And that's what that's going to create. We want people who come to our system, understand what we're about, and having that accreditation, what they've got now, is going to make the game a lot stronger.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Brilliant to have these games on at the end of the year, and of course that trip to France mid-season as well. Just one last thing before we end. You said to me right at the beginning of this journey as England head coach 4 years ago that this was one of your dream jobs. Is it still? Now you're doing it?
Yeah, it's better than that now. It's really enjoyable, and you know whether I'm going to get back into coaching, I'm not sure what's going to happen. But to me, this is the best job. There's no doubt about that. To sit in the stand at the end of the game, well, nearing the end of the game at Edinburgh, having won 3-0 against a team and prove everybody wrong is just the best feeling. To sing our song after the game with all the players from the NRL and Super League is just so enjoyable. I can't tell you, and the spirit of England will carry on.
Well, Shaun, again, thank you for joining us. That is all we have time for this week, but England back in action at the end of the year. 2 games against Samoa at Wigan and Leeds. But of course, before that, next week, we're off to Wembley.